What if the most powerful weapon in the fight against centuries of oppression wasn't a weapon at all? What if it was something as simple and as profoundly radical as telling the truth? This is the story of how integrity, honesty in the face of lies, and dignity in the face of dehumanization became the unbreakable backbone of the Black community. It's a testament to a strength forged not in the fires of aggression, but in the quiet, unwavering resolve to be true to yourself and to each other, especially when the world insisted you were less than human. When we talk about Black history, the conversation is, understandably, often focused on the immense struggle against brutal systems of oppression. But inside that struggle is a deeper, more empowering story that often gets missed. The story of integrity as the ultimate tool for survival and triumph. To really get the Black experience, you have to understand that in a world built on the lie of racial inferiority, the simple act of being honest, of holding on to your dignity and your word, wasn't just a moral choice, was an act of radical resistance. And that's the very heart of what we're exploring today. How, in the face of systemic dishonesty that devalued Black lives and denied Black truths, integrity became the currency of community, the engine of progress, and the very definition of strength. We're going to journey through history from the horrors of slavery to the righteous fire of the civil rights movement and into the complexities of today to see how this unwavering commitment to honesty and self-worth has been the cornerstone of Black resilience. This isn't just a history lesson. It's a look into the profound spiritual and psychological strength that allowed a people to not only survive unimaginable odds, but to come out the other side with their humanity shining. We're going to tear down the myth that strength is only about physical power and show how real power lies in the courage to hold on to your own truth. To really grasp this, we have to go back to the beginning, to chattel slavery, a system engineered to strip every last piece of humanity from a person. The slave codes were the legal framework for this brutality, and they were designed specifically to write into law the idea that enslaved people were property, not human beings. These codes denied them the right to marry, to own anything, to even gather without a white person present. And most critically, they made it illegal to teach an enslaved person to read or write. An enslaved person's word meant nothing in a court of law against a white person. Their whole existence was legally defined by denying their truth and their honor. In an environment like that, a world built on a monstrous lie, you'd expect ideas like honesty and integrity to just fall apart. But the opposite happened. Within the enslaved communities, a person's word became everything. It was the invisible thread holding the social fabric together. With no legal rights, no written contracts, and zero protection under the law, trust was the only currency that mattered. If someone said they'd help you escape, you had to believe them. If a message was passed along the Underground Railroad, its truthfulness was a matter of life and death. This created an internal code of honor, a system of justice and accountability that operated completely outside the master's watch. It wasn't written down, but it was lived, and it was enforced by the community. A person who was dishonest wasn't just an outcast. They were a direct threat to everyone's survival. This is why you see slave narratives filled with stories of these cloned bonds of kinship, both family and chosen family, that were the bedrock of life. These bonds were built on mutual trust and shared truth, a world of integrity created in defiance of the dishonest world that held them captive. Just think about the spirituals. These weren't just songs of sorrow. They were complex, coded messages. They were maps to freedom, warnings of danger, and declarations of faith, all hidden in plain sight. The lyrics carried a double meaning, a layer of truth that only people inside the community could understand. This was integrity in its most creative form, using language to build a world of shared meaning while resisting an oppressor who could only hear the surface melody. And then, of course, there's the towering figure of Frederick Douglass. Born into slavery, Douglass knew that being denied the ability to read and write was a key tool of oppression. He famously said, "Once you learn to read, you will be forever free." For him, learning to read was a quest for his own truth. When he finally escaped and wrote his autobiography, asterisk narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave asterisk, it was an earth-shattering act of integrity. Aha! He put his name and his story on paper, daring the world to deny his truth, to deny his humanity. Aha! His words were a direct takedown of the entire system of slavery, an insistence on his own reality, backed by the undeniable power of his own life. His honesty wasn't just personal, it was a political weapon that exposed the lies of a nation. In a time when the law itself was a lie, the truth-telling of the enslaved wasn't just a good deed. It was a revolutionary act that laid the foundation for the long fight to come. When slavery ended and the Jim Crow era began, the war against black integrity just changed its uniform. Segregation wasn't just about separate water fountains. It was a whole system of laws and social rules designed to constantly reinforce the lie of black inferiority. It was a daily attack on a person's dignity. Black people were expected to be deferential, to step off the sidewalk for white people, to never make eye contact. Being called a liar by a white person with no way to defend yourself was a common humiliation. The whole social order was held up by this forced performance of submission. But out of this struggle came a new and powerful form of resistance, the integrity of nonviolence. At its heart, the civil rights movement was a fight for the truth to be seen. It was a moral crusade that turned dignity into a weapon. Leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. understood that the biggest weakness of the whole segregationist system was its own obvious immorality. The strategy was to expose that hypocrisy through acts of profound, unwavering integrity. Think about the sit-ins. Young black students, dressed in their Sunday best, would sit at a whites-only lunch counter and politely ask for a cup of coffee. When they were met with insults, with food dumped on their heads, with violence, they refused to retaliate. They were rigorously trained in nonviolence, often based on Gandhian principles. It was all about maintaining absolute self-control and dignity in the face of pure ugliness. This wasn't passive. It was an active, disciplined demonstration of moral superiority. Their quiet presence screamed, "We are human beings, worthy of respect, and our calm integrity is exposing the ugliness of your hate." Their honesty about their own humanity, shown through their dignified actions, was more powerful than any slur or punch. And then we have Rosa Parks. The popular story paints her as just a tired seamstress who randomly decided she'd had enough, but the truth is so much more powerful. Rosa Parks was a seasoned, lifelong activist and the secretary of the Montgomery NAACP for years. She had investigated cases of racial injustice and violence. Her refusal to give up her seat wasn't some spontaneous act of fatigue. It was a deliberate, calculated act of integrity by a trained activist. She knew the power of her stance. Her quiet, dignified no was the result of years spent fighting for the truth. It was an act of profound self-respect that lit a fire, sparking the Montgomery bus boycott, 381-day campaign of collective integrity, where the Black community, who made up 75% of the bus riders, refused to pay to be humiliated anymore. Dr. King himself laid this principle out in his letter from a Birmingham jail. He drew a clear line between just and unjust laws, arguing that we all have a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. But he insisted it must be done openly, lovingly, and with a willingness to accept the penalty. This is the core of integrity as resistance. It's not about chaos. It's about holding the system accountable to its own promises of justice. It's about having the highest respect for law by demanding that the law itself be respectable. Our fight for civil rights was a battle to close the gap between America's promise and its reality, a battle fought, and won not with tricks or violence, but with the unbreakable power of truth and dignity. That thread of integrity, woven through centuries of struggle, is still a vital part of the Black experience today. The legal battles of the civil rights era may be won, but the fight against systemic racism and the subtle, daily denials of Black humanity is far from over. And in today's world, integrity has taken on new and equally powerful forms. One of the most beautiful and profound examples of this is the idea of Black joy. In a world that often floods Black communities with images of trauma and pain, the simple act of choosing and celebrating joy is a radical act of self-worth. Black joy isn't about ignoring injustice or pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about refusing to let that pain define your entire existence. It's the integrity of the human soul insisting on its right to be happy, to be at peace, and to rest. When a system tries to grind you down and reduce you to your struggle, embracing joy becomes a powerful form of resistance. It's a declaration that says, "My humanity is whole." It includes laughter, celebration, and peace, and you don't have the power to take that from me. Sharing those moments of joy, whether with family, in communities, or online, becomes an act of collective strength, a way to recharge for the ongoing fight. You can also see this legacy of integrity in the rise of Black intentional communities. From the freedom colonies built by formerly enslaved families in Texas, to modern movements trying to build new, safe communities, Black people have always come together to create safety, prosperity, and culture on their own terms. These aren't just housing developments. They are spaces planned and built around shared values of self-sufficiency, collective well-being, and cultural preservation. In a world where Black people have so often been excluded or exploited, Creating a community based on mutual trust and a shared vision is an incredible act of self-determination. It's a testament to the belief that by working together honestly and with a common purpose, they can build the world they want to see. And this whole principle of building our own spaces and defining our own stories is something I see happening everywhere. It's in the way we rally to support Black-owned businesses, in the art we create, and in the stories we choose to tell. It's a powerful thing to see. If this is resonating with you and you're getting value from this conversation, take a second to hit that subscribe button. We're building a community here around these important stories, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. And this commitment to truth-telling continues in movements like Black Lives Matter. At its core, the movement is a demand for the world to recognize a fundamental truth that Black lives have inherent value and dignity. The phrase itself is a powerful affirmation in a society where the actions of institutions often suggest the opposite. It's a continuation of the work of Frederick Douglass and Rosa Parks' unwavering insistence on a truth that should be obvious. It forces us all to confront uncomfortable realities and demands accountability. The activism, the protests, the scholarship, it all comes from the integrity of bearing witness to injustice and demanding that the world finally acknowledges the truth. From Black joy to Black-owned businesses to global movements for justice, it's clear that integrity isn't just some historical artifact. It's a living, breathing force that continues to define the unshakable strength of the Black community. So, as we look back on this journey from the brutal plantations through the dignified defiance of the Jim Crow South and into the vibrant, complex world of today's, one powerful thread remains unbroken: the unwavering integrity of Black people. We've seen that in a world determined to build itself on the lie of racial hierarchy. The simple act of being honest, of honoring your word, and carrying yourself with dignity was never simple. It was a radical strategy for survival, a brilliant tool for resistance, and the ultimate expression of strength. This wasn't the strength of brute force. It was the profound, lasting strength of the human spirit refusing to be broken. It was the strength of enslaved people creating codes of honor in a lawless world. It was the strength of nonviolent protesters meeting raw hatred with unshakable poise. And it is the strength of a community today that insists on celebrating its joy, building its own future, and speaking its truth, even when it feels like no one is listening. This legacy of integrity is more than just history. It's a blueprint for power and a deep source of pride. It teaches all of us that real strength isn't about never struggling, but about how you carry yourself in the middle of the struggle. It's the understanding that your character, your word, and your dignity are things no one can ever take from you. They are the bedrock of self-worth and the foundation on which communities, movements, and a better future are built. The story of Black integrity is the story of a people who, against all odds, held on to the truth of their own humanity and, in doing so, have continually forced the world to become more honest with itself. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. This is such a deep and important part of our history, and I truly believe these stories of strength need to be told and retold. If this video resonated with you, and you want to keep exploring these powerful narratives, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit that notification bell. But now, I really want to hear from you. This is a space for us to build community. In what ways do you see this legacy of integrity and honesty showing up in your own life or your community today? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree? Disagree? Share your examples and your thoughts. Okay. Let's keep this vital conversation going.